Welcome everyone to Care Australia and Business Women Australia's interactive online webinar as we lead into International Women's Day 2023. And we're going to have a deep dive into the power of the multiplier effect and where women sit in that. So thank you so much to Care Australia for partnering with us again this year. We're really excited to be joining forces again and raising such an important awareness around these, the power of women. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lyn Hawkins. I am the National Director and the co-founder of Business Women Australia. It's a national collective and it did originally start in WA. Someone was asking me about that. But before we start and do this deep dive, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are all meeting on sacred sovereign land that was lived on, danced on and celebrated for over 120,000 continuous years in some parts of this beautiful country. And pay our respects to all Indigenous elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. I'm here in WA on this beautiful country that is part of the Noongar Nation, the Whadjuk people in around this area. This was a very important area with wetlands that went from where the Rainbow Serpent is in the big river right through to the wetlands that then went right up north to Yanchep and then out through to the ocean. So this was a really important part of Indigenous life here before colonisation. So just like to, acknowledge and be grateful and thankful for the opportunity to be here. The Business Women Australia vision is really around this collaboration to contribute to the greater good that we all care about. And each one of us has our own passion projects and our own purpose that drives us. And what we do very differently is we join forces with our members, and our members drive the program. So every year is a little bit different based on who our leading members are and what we put into our program. So if you're new to this, it may seem a little bit strange. It is a bit of networking as well, but the most important part of it is really around how we co-create and co-design and share and experiment what we're doing, because our vision is really to raise that profile of female leadership in the ways that we want to make these changes in the world. So really raising that visibility of business women. So we love this topic that Care have brought to us, because the multiplier effect really resonates with everything that Business Women Australia stands for as well. So we aren't just business owners and entrepreneurs. We are also members across director roles, executive roles, management, supervisors. We've got a lot of professionals in our collective. We have a lot of coaches and consultants in our collective. We've got women from C-suite, CEOs, chief financial officers, heads of people and culture, women on boards, leaders and emerging leaders, and a few students that really get involved with us as well. We're doing some great work with Practira. Leanne's on the call today, who is Business Women Australia's coordinator or membership and admin guru, and she's been working with the students through Practira program. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, we can connect you with one of our members who's actually got students who are looking for projects. So reach out to Leanne. 5 areas of development that we really focus on as professionals in our own personal development is around leadership and what leadership means, and business improvement, and how we can bring about more sustainable and better businesses, achieving purpose and profit and our sustainability long term. Personal growth is a big one, as leaders, understanding and being aware of ourselves and growing as women and as individuals is part of that piece of the puzzle. Influence and profile is also, again, connected to leadership. If we if we haven't got profile, if we aren't being seen, if we aren't being heard, we can't influence. So we really are encouraging women to step up in their communities, in their teams, at work, to be able to make the changes that we want to see in the world. And of course, connecting is so important. I've made some of my best friends through the Business Women Australia community, and I often say that's probably one of the best things about being a part of this collective is I've got amazing friendships all around Australia. We share these values, and there's so many more values that we do hold close to our heart. But obviously, inclusion and diversity is key. Courage is a big one when we're sort of demanding of each other that we step up. The honesty to give and receive feedback as a part of our own self-improvement. I get some great feedback from our community members who always come to the table helping me improve, and vice versa. And I really think that that's important, because if we are consciously caring and positively focused about the future, taking and learning and growing and recognizing it's okay to be imperfect, we're all having a crack at this sort of change and leadership journey. That's a part of the truth of who we are and what we're about. So loads of opportunities to get involved. If you are new and interested in becoming sort of more engaged with Business Women Australia, we'd love to see you. Our LinkedIn group is open to every Australian working woman. You don't have to be a member to be in the group. You do have to be a member to post in the group. We get 30 or 40 requests a day for posts, and we don't want it to be a spammy group. So we prioritise our members, our financial members, classic members, and our premium members. So feel free, if you are a member, to use that as a platform to share your ideas and thoughts, your events. If you're promoting, if you've got your own women's group, get in there and promote it in LinkedIn. We have obviously our website and on events calendar. That's a good place. You can subscribe to receive our e-news. We have Buzz magazines that you can download. Every year we produce an amazing magazine with our leaders. It's a great read. And on there's loads of resources. All the recordings from past podcasts and webinars are in there as well. So head to our website. It's great. You don't need to be a member. It's not hidden behind a firewall. We want that visibility piece, and we want other women to be able to access it. If memberships, be expensive for you, you can still get access to those great resources. The Facebook page, we have, of course, on Facebook, we engage with a lot of women across Facebook, and the members have a private members group. Twitter, we're still hanging in there with Twitter. I'm not quite sure how much longer, but we're not as active across that. We'll make a decision, I think, next year about that platform. And Instagram, we are on Instagram. But again, we couldn't do what we need to do nationally with all these events. We did 80 events last year. We're aiming to do 100 this year, and we wouldn't be able to do it without the support of Catco. Kathy Smith and her team look after our website, and they do quite a lot of our social media posts as well. Kathy is also looks after our Bunbury chapter and really helps out across all our Southwest chapters, and helps me, as a great support from a marketing perspective. Intact Teams is the wonderful Jessica Schubert. She leads our professional development around leadership. And Anne-Marie Cross is our podcast queen. 3 Drops, my favourite wine, a great Southern produced wine. They're award-winning. And Jo Bradbury is just so wonderful at running wine tasting events all around the nation. So we love 3 Drops. And, of course, the inspiration source of Vita Carlino, who provides a lot of mentoring for me, but also a great space in Inglewood that we have host monthly events in WA. And we're always looking for additional collaborative partners. And, of course, CARE are a wonderful partner. We do loads of partnerships with our members, and one of them is Disc Flow Accreditation. Jessica Schubert has the rights and leads that program in Australia. For those of you who don't know about Disc Flow, it's the extension of DISC, which is like a profiling around characteristics of communication, and the flow bit have they brought into that the emotional intelligence aspect. So It's great for understanding the differences inside teams and getting more awareness of each other. Of course, we've got Kathy McKenzie. Sorry, I've got a mistake there in your name. I can see that. Sorry, Kathy, but she is on the call.
Dreadful.
BWA accredited coaching course. That's a great course. I did the Cert 4 through Fire Up. I really encourage you all, even if you're not thinking about becoming a coach, if you are in a leadership or management or supervisory role, having coaching skills is so powerful. I wish I'd done the Cert 4 years ago. I'm currently doing my diploma. If Kathy, maybe pop your details in the chat box, so if anyone wants to follow up about that, and just let Kathy know that you saw it on the Business Women Australia webinar. That'd be great. We do have a lot of stuff on our website, so go to our website about those accreditation courses and our partnerships with these amazing organisations. And Anne-Marie Cross has a do-it-yourself core business foundations course that you can actually learn more about and consider. So for those of you who might be out consulting or coaching or starting up your business, I'd highly recommend you do this course. Anne-Marie is not only brilliant as a podcasting queen, she's a wonderful marketing and strategy expert. So there's 2 levels of membership. We are producing a corporate level of membership or a team membership that'll be announced soon. So if you have an organisation with multiple women that would like to join, we're basically going to have bundles. So we'd love to hear from any organisations who want to support their women in this way and to encourage them to get involved. Any questions? Leanne is on the call, and contact Leanne at businesswomenaustralia.com.au. And there's so much coming up in our calendar, it's ridiculous. We've got Sydney Chats, Cheese and Wine. Is self-care a business superpower? I think it is, and it'll be really interesting to get Emma Gray's facilitation on that courageous conversation in Sydney. That's going to be in Mosman on 8th of March. On the same day, so International Women's Day, we're also doing the Melbourne Leadership Insights with Catherine Leach and Catherine Dixon, Catherine Dixon is on the call today. That's going to be a wonderful Q&A and an opportunity to be networking with professional and executive women. And on the 10th of March, we have an online Queensland Community Roundtable and connection with me, and Tracy Cooper, who's one of our leaders in Queensland, is joining me on that. So come along if you're from Queensland and give us some ideas around what it is you want to see, and we'll be doing some work on our areas of challenges and opportunities as a roundtable. 15th of March, Sydney Walk and Talk, fabulous Martina Saudi and Jo Keating. Joanne, they every month the Sydney ladies meet in the domain and walk around the domain. It's available and free to anyone who wants to join them. And in Perth, we're having Chats, Cheese and Wine with the Lost Art of Paying Attention with Vita Carlino at the Inspiration Space. Another very, very deep, courageous conversation where we hold space and we have a topic and we really have a deep dive into what the topic means to each of us individually. There's no fixing, everyone's perfect, but it's a really great chance to consider some of the things that get in the way of us developing further in terms of our own lives. We've got a fashion show with Perth Merino in Perth with it's actually Merino and Co. Sorry, I've got another typo in there. That's fine, but it's merino wool, and there's a fantastic opportunity to hear Fiona Yu's story. She is a remarkable woman. Obviously, she is originally from China. And the export market that was huge for merino wool was really hit by COVID. It's been interesting seeing how she's had to pivot, and we'll get the opportunity to see the latest season. Brisbane on the 4th of April, I'll be over there with Tracy Cooper and Helen Nance joining us to have a deep dive into personal branding and business development. We're going to be sharing what works in our world, and we'll have amazing women sharing best practices really around that. And on the 28th of April, Bunbury down south of WA, I've got a networking lunch with Kathy Smith. So loads on and things coming on all the time in the calendar. So without further ado, I think I took a little bit longer than I was meant to in there. So thank you for bearing with me for that. We've got hashtag cracking the code, the UN theme, hashtag embrace equity, the International Women's Day enterprise theme. We're bringing that together because really around Care Australia and the multiplier effect and the power of women really does fit beautifully into these themes. Dr. Kate Ringvall is also going to be a part of the chat. Kate's an expert in sustainability and circular economy. But before we do anything more, I'm going to hand over to the fabulous Suzi Chinnery. Suzi is Head of Capability and Impact, leading Care Australia's program strategy, and she's got a focus across areas of women's economic justice and climate justice. She's got over 20 years experience in supporting development programs across Asia and the Pacific. She's passionate about women's issues, about leadership, gender equality and gender safety. She holds a Bachelor of Business, a Master's in International Studies, a Master's in Public and International Law, and a grad dip in psychology. So she's pretty talented and driven woman, and I'm going to hand over to Suzi. And I think we're also going to be playing a video shortly as well. Have we got Suzi?
I'm here. Are we going to video first? Sorry, I thought we were going to the video first.
Yep. Okay, I've got the video and I'm going to share the video now. We've tested it, all works.
From birth, women and girls face barriers that men don't. From lower pay to surviving the climate crisis, they bear the brunt of poverty. But they're also the solution, because when one woman escapes poverty, she brings 4 others in her circle with her. And that's a powerful multiplier. Care helps women by creating opportunities. Opportunities to build knowledge and self-confidence. Arpita wants to be a scientist. Ms. Rawati dreams of starting her own business. And Melina finally has control over how her family's money is spent. We create opportunities for women to become leaders, because when women lead, everyone benefits. Rosalind leads her community to fight for survival in our changing climate. Emily builds safer homes for her neighbours to withstand cyclones. And women in Shea Drums district feel safer now that she has their backs. For themselves, for their communities, and for a fair world, we support women in their fight for justice. Because all a woman needs is the right opportunity, and she'll leave no one behind. Support her circle.
Thanks, Lyn, and hello to everybody today. So I'm joining from Care Australia, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Her Circle campaign a little bit later on the call, but just perhaps by way of introduction, Care Australia is a global international humanitarian and aid organisation working to defeat global poverty by supporting women particularly, and focusing on putting women and girls and gender equality at the heart of what we do. And so we work across our international contexts, both in humanitarian emergencies like the current earthquake in Turkey and Syria, but also in long-term programs that support women in rural and urban communities across Asia and the Pacific, and really looking to support lasting change. CARE's approach is to work in partnership with local leaders and local groups so that we are making sure that the support and the work that we do is really being embedded in and sustained by those communities and enabling those people to continue building their own future. So that's a little introduction to CARE. Do you want me to go into a little bit about the Her Circle campaign? Yeah. So Her Circle, which is a little bit on the video, is shining a light on some of the issues faced by women across Asia and the Pacific, and obviously around International Women's Day. It's a great opportunity to really share that and highlight that for people in Australia to understand the reasons why women are more likely to live in poverty, but also how they are part of the solution. And I think we see that in Australia ourselves with impacts of COVID hitting women harder than men often, both financially, but also that psychological toll that COVID's taken, and also what's often called the shadow pandemic of gender-based violence, which we talked a lot about during COVID. And we also know, many of the barriers that women face around workplaces and access to leadership positions, something that obviously this group is really passionate about, and also experiencing greater impacts of climate change. So the Her Circle campaign is really focused on providing opportunity for better conversations to get people thinking and talking about gender roles, and thinking about that in terms of leadership, in terms of women-led businesses and initiatives, and to take that conversation about gender roles to really kick off conversations that can help people to better interrogate the role that gender is playing in their own lives, both as a bias, but also as a barrier that they might be seeking to overcome. So CARE's work focuses on gender justice, and we put, I guess, gender equality at the heart of all that we do. As part of that, we work on women's economic justice, resilience and climate justice, and responding to emergencies and crises, as I'd mentioned. I guess the focus for CARE on gender equality has really been a long-standing one. I think as a global organisation, it's been about 15 years that's been really at the centre of our strategy. And we know that women and girls bear the brunt of poverty. They're more severely affected by climate change, disasters, conflict, but also that they have incredible power, skills, potential to really inform solutions and make those solutions as sustainable and inclusive as possible. In terms of some of our work in economic justice, we work with local communities to establish village level or local level savings and loans associations. And those are really supporting women from the basic financial management or financial support and savings through to building their own businesses, and building those in local communities to help those women have more access to markets and better opportunities in terms of their what might be a very small scale or micro enterprise. One of the spaces that we are building into is also going to be around microfinance and supporting women who are maybe more established entrepreneurs and helping them to access loans for their businesses. And I guess a big focus for CARE's work is really on trying to talk at the systems level as well around what those rules are around economic justice and how we can rewrite those to better benefit women, but better include women in how the rules are made, how the resources are shared. Our work in resilience and climate justice is really important, and you may have seen on the news today Vanuatu experiencing a cyclone overnight with another one to hit in a couple of days. So that's 2 cyclones in a week for Vanuatu. And so that's part of the reason that we do the work in resilience and climate justice, is recognising that our region is definitely the hardest hit by climate change, and we're going to see more and more in disasters just like that, of 2 cyclones in a week for a country. And we know that women are hit by those. They're more likely to experience violence in a post-disaster space, but also that they really are key to keeping communities, children safe and enabling them to recover. And so that's a big part of our work, is actually building that preparedness for climate disasters and looking at how communities can be protected in advance of things like cyclones or floods, and then also how they are supported to rebuild afterwards and rebuild in really inclusive ways. So that's just a bit of an overview of care in our work.
It's incredible work you do, and as you said, it's been going for so many years, and it's just so many more issues now facing the world because of this climate crisis that we're in. Now her circle is such a great concept, and it's based on this multiplier effect, where one woman escapes poverty and she brings 4 others with her, and it's very powerful, that concept. How does Care know that that's actually true?
So I think we certainly know from our programs and our experience across 25 years of programming, 35 years, I might have just got that number wrong, but that really we see it in the community work that we do, that women do bring each other along, whether it's through a leadership space or something very specific in that household level. We know that women bring each other along because of the way that they make decisions differently and the way that they share their skills and capabilities differently. So if we look at some of the evidence from our work, we know that healthy, educated women mean that their families will be more likely to be healthy and educated. We know that women tend to earn an income, they reinvest that in the health and education of their children and families. We also know that when women's voice is brought into a space, she will tend to speak for the needs of others and be inclusive of others. And that's a part of that social connection and engagement that she has. We know that women engaged in leading make more inclusive decisions, and probably better ones, we might say. And I think we also know that we see them reinvesting significant amounts of income. So for us, it's not really just about a women's rights approach in a social sense. It's also a really important and critical part of the impact that a woman can have in her community or in her household. In Samoa, we're working with a partner called the Women in Business Development, or WIBDI, and we work with a woman there that's working in a nursery with seedlings, and her business there has grown so much that she's now supporting her family with the income, but she's also able to hire family members. And we see that repeatedly, that women in small enterprises are hiring other women to come into those spaces. So they're doing it in really practical ways, but also doing it in terms of the way that they engage with society and decision making.
Yeah, I saw that when I was over in Cambodia recently as a guest of the Australian ambassador there, just how much the entrepreneurial women in the ASEAN region are really making that incredible impact. And as you say, they're often employing family members and others. They're often, they don't get access to any of the support and childcare, other than the family village concept. But then they're in the sandwich generation as well, worrying about their parents and their grandparents, and as well as their community. And it's just so uplifting to think about how supportive women are. I sometimes hear a bad rap, the 1 or 2 outliers of women who might not be supportive of other women. And especially as a director of Business Women Australia, I quite often I'm surprised that someone asks me about, this concept of women not being supportive of each other. And it's not a common thing. Most women are fully supportive of other women and want to see other women, be safe and get ahead and be successful. So, there's this concept of bringing 4 others with you. And I'm sure we can all think of lots of examples of where we've lifted up others too, in our own lives, as mentors, as leaders, as friends, in business, at work, in the community, wherever it might be, big or small. So I'm just sort of want everyone on the call just to reflect on the opportunities that might have come to us, either personally or professionally. And can you tell me a little bit more about how this plays out in the communities that you work in, Suzi?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that I love to hear from our evidence base is actually around working on the issue around violence against women. And some researchers a few years ago did some great global research looking at the best ways to tackle violence against women. And one of the things that they found is just how powerful women's groups are and were, and that across, I think it was 4 decades of research that they looked at, the most important common factor for addressing violence against women wasn't a nation's income or how progressive it was, or even the number of women in politics. It was actually whether we were mobilising women's movements and women's organisations. And I think that's a really powerful piece of evidence about just the power of women coming together on an issue at that very big macro level is just so critical for supporting issues that are important to women. And I think we also see it in terms of some of that educational gain, and particularly around where women are educated, their children are more likely to be educated, there's more likely to be greater income for a family, better earning potentials. And it's also, I think, one of the spaces that CARE's working in is looking at gender lens impact investing, and actually looking at how do we use the power of markets to really build support for women who are in business supporting women's issues themselves. And so that gender lens investing looks at how do we build organisations that are addressing sexual harassment in the workplace, that are looking at building up gender equality outcomes and gender equality and representation, and in terms of policies in organisations. And so part of our work is also looking at bringing those two worlds together to bring that together. I think for CARE, it makes sense to do it. It's obviously a moral imperative, but it's also that point that everyone really does benefit. And as you said, I think for the Asia Pacific region, 66% of small to medium enterprises are women-led, and they employ the bulk of women across the Asia Pacific region. And I think that's a really critical space for us when we're thinking about how we support women in business ourselves across Asia and the Pacific, and that's through programs, but it's also through those really micro businesses like a small stall in a rural community. I think the other space for us is really trying to build women in leadership and looking at how we build more women into leadership positions, because we know that there's one thing to be part of the system, but another part is who's at the table making the decisions, having the power, influencing, making change. And so we know that more women in leadership positions changes both the nature of decisions and how the resources are allocated. And so some of our work really looks at how we help build individual skills and confidence in those spaces to be able to occupy often very male-dominated spaces around power and leadership. And I think some of the other work that we've seen has been part of work in garment factories across Southeast Asia, and how we can build women leaders within a garment factory in a very female-orientated environment, but really build that to represent the needs of women in relation to their workplace experience, but also their own needs around health or nutrition or financial planning. So for us, we can really see that any space that we can go into where we can build up one woman, she is bringing other women with her as part of that, whether that's at that very big societal level or in a single workplace or in a single community.
Yeah, I've got a background in consumer psychology, and I'm really fascinated with the information that your team gave me in the lead up to planning for this event around how women spend money too. The work that we're seeing in countries like Ghana, where that they spend differently, and because they come from caring for others, and then it has that wonderful sort of multiplier effect in terms of the economic spend as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it's often a little bit stereotypical to say that sort of, women are going to spend on the children and the family, but it really is about, that sort of sense of how she makes a decision does tend to be all encompassing and focused on families. And so I know some of the research we've seen is that in Brazil, women's income really improved family nutritional status, because it was just part of what they were able to bring as part of income was better food. And I think that women do tend to make different buying decisions, and so it is again slightly stereotypical, but generally male's income goes to things like cigarettes or alcohol or things that he's doing with in his male community, and less focused on delivering into the family in terms of food, nutrition, education for children. And I think that it's really important for us to focus on that, because most of the people who are chronically hungry or malnourished are women and children. And we know that most of the illiterate people in the world are women. So the statistics of who's eating less, who's not having 3 meals a day, who is less educated, is women. And so that's so crucial to change that. But also the reason to change it is not just for that individual woman, but for the changed decisions she makes of her family.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about who's at the centre of her circle, and I love the story of Marlena from Papua New Guinea. Do you want to share a little bit about Marlena?
Love to. Yeah. So in our work in Papua New Guinea, we have some projects that work both with coffee and cocoa farmers in different parts of Papua New Guinea. And Marlena's work is in cocoa farming. And part of the work that we do there is training both in the farming itself, so technical training around cocoa farming, but also trying to look at gender equality issues and family financial management. And that's really recognising that in part there is a risk, and that's actually global, that as women earn more income, they can experience their higher likelihood of experiencing violence in their own home from a shift in the power dynamic. So part of CARE's work is to say we do recognise the need to build income, but also recognise that we need to help people manage that risk of a shifting power dynamic as a woman becomes a more powerful person within her home. And so part of that work that we do there is then seeing their family unit happiness grow as much as their family income, and really then being able to budget. And when you're going from subsistence to actually having extra money, it's a really important skill to be able to understand, how do I budget and how do I manage that extra money so that we can make choices like sending kids to university, which is part of what Marlena's goal is to see her kids go to university. So that's a really big change for an individual family, and that's the sort of programs that CARE's doing across Asia and the Pacific, is trying to help families do that leap, make that leap.
Yeah, that's massive. I love that story, and I think that Marlena is such an inspiring woman. It really is phenomenal. Suzi, I'm going to invite Dr. Kate Ringvall to come into the conversation. Kate, I know you are driving. Is it okay and safe for us to have a chat with you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm passenger, so.
Oh, that's good.
I'm not actually driving,
which is really good. You moving, and I'm going, I don't know if this is an OHS issue here, but
all good.
Before we chat, I just want to give everyone a bit of background about the incredible work that you do. You're a leader in the field of sustainability and circular economy. Kate has a master's in public policy and a PhD in planning. She's worked with all levels of government. She's worked with large corporations, and she's worked with universities in the sustainability piece. And she's also co-founder and governing fellow of the Galactic Corporation Cooperative, isn't it? Galactic Cooperative. And they are leading the way for the development of a circular economy here in my hometown in WA. But Kate's also leading the circular economy agenda for GHD, and which is sort of keeping her in Canberra. I think she's in Sydney at the moment, and she's heading off to a site visit as we speak. Kate, you see a lot of these examples of the multiplier effect, don't you, in bringing about change? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really apparent in sustainability in particular, and circular economy is a piece of that. that women seeing that there's a problem and then kind of moving to bring the rest of the community and their counterparts along with them. And there's some really big examples, particularly in Australia. I was, thinking about who's done the biggest work in this space. And Ronnie Khan is probably one of our biggest women leaders in this kind of sustainability space. And for those who don't know, she started Oz Harvest, and Oz Harvest is really, they've transformed how food waste, or waste doesn't exist, so we call it excess food, is dealt with in a commercial sense, because there was so much food waste going to just straight to landfill, which was completely stupid and a waste of the value of those of that food and the effort that was taken to get that food to a certain level of product. And she also, one of the key, I think, issues for her was the connection between food waste and the amount of either homeless people or people that were not eating sufficient to their life and good living and good lifestyle. And so she's really made that connection really apparent. And now, of course, we've got another, I think, 2 or 3 organisations in Australia at least doing the same thing. The other woman that I really wanted to call out, particularly in the circular economy space, is internationally a lady called Dame Ellen MacArthur. Lots of people probably don't know anything about Ellen MacArthur, but what she was about, I think at least a decade ago, she was going around the world in her solo yacht, and she bumped up against some of the biggest impacts of human life and our kind of ability to waste. And the people have heard of the big island of plastic that floats in the Atlantic and other oceans. And so she came up against this island of our crap, and she really felt galvanized and motivated to do something different. And so through her community, she's developed the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and they've really championed the circular economy. And the circular economy is really about making sure materials that we produce and we take them out of the ground, we make something out of them, and we don't then put them straight in the landfill, which is kind of how we're doing at the moment. And so she's really brought a whole community of people along with her. And in particular, she's really focused on making sure that women and women's issues are at the centre of all of that conversation. And they're probably the 2 key, but there are so many women in this space helping to get climate justice for communities across the globe who are being really impacted by the crisis that we're in at the moment.
Thanks so much, Kate. And look, they are incredibly powerful case studies and examples of how, as women, we can really lead the change. So I really appreciate you staying on the call when you've got such a busy schedule today. And I know we're going to be losing you shortly. But thanks very much. And we'll bring you back to really focus on that at another stage, because I'm sure we're
I'll be here in the background.
That. But it's a great segue into my next question for Suzi, because CARE, talks about this very important work they do in defeating poverty, and particularly in the area of climate justice. And we've just been talking about, climate and the impacts of our choices in consuming and in sustainability on climate, as well as all the other things that our lifestyle and choices can impact on. So tell me, Suzi, what does climate justice have to do with the poverty alleviation work that you're doing? And how is climate justice affecting, or how is it relevant in terms of women being affected disproportionately?
Thanks, Lyn. So I think I think the key point is that climate and social inequality are just intrinsically intertwined. So we know that for women, gender puts them at increased risk of violence, reduced income compared to men, and we've talked a little bit about that. But we also know that other social vulnerabilities do the same thing. So race, ethnicity, age, ability or disability mean that when a climate change event comes, and we can think of the event like cyclones in Vanuatu at the moment, that people who have those additional barriers to participation in society or to building up resilience or building up reserves for when something happens are disproportionately affected, because the impact on them is greater, their ability to respond to the impacts is less. And so we know that even in a climate disaster event, domestic work like getting food and water, that sort of thing is more likely to fall to women and men. So even though women and children, so even though women, children, men are all experiencing that cyclone, what happens afterwards is, women head off, do the domestic work, bring in the water, bring in the food. And as a result, they're exposed to more hazards. They're out in an environment more frequently, they're exposed to more violence. And so that those things come together, and it's almost creating that perfect storm around what that exposure to risk is for women in those situations. But we also know that climate change itself is increasing conflict across the world, and a lot more conflicts are happening because of climate change and that reducing access to resources generally. And so those who have less power, like women, are then less able to adapt or less able to access the changes or the benefits from it. And I think there's also the other part of that I've talked about a little bit earlier, which is just participating in and influencing decisions around what a society or what a community is going to do to address climate change or adapt to climate change. And so women, people with disabilities, people of different races or ethnicities might often be shut out of those spaces. And so their ability to influence even how their society adapts to climate change or the things they put in place is also limited by that. And so I guess it's also recognising that, and often those people have done the least to cause climate change, but are experiencing its full impacts and are often less placed to guide how society is changing or adapting to that. So the Pacific is obviously a place that's really subject to impacts of climate change, particularly around cyclones. And we know Timor is another country that we work in the Pacific that's quite vulnerable to natural disasters, floods, cyclones, landslides as a result of the flooding. And that really preparing for and responding to those disasters has always been a men's business, really. And so part of the work that we're doing in community disaster management committees is actually trying to change that. And there's a woman that we work with there, Julmira, and we're just working with her and other women like her to really build her ability to take a role in community disaster management committees, to have a say in those spaces, not just be sitting at the table silently, but actually having a say and being able to make decisions about what happens from that at that community in terms of disaster management and preparation. And so I think that sets a different role model for the community in terms of what women can do and the different roles that they can play by leading by example with that. And she's also able to address the needs of people with disabilities and think about the children and the elderly and bring all of those perspectives into the approach that they're taking for disaster management in those communities.
It really is very powerful, and it brings to light then, well, what can we do as women, in this country where we're so fortunate and we have so many opportunities and we take so much for granted. I'm thinking here while I'm listening to this, I know I can donate to Care Australia, I can perhaps bequeath the family inheritance to Care Australia rather than my 4 children. I know Catherine Dixon's laughing at But I'd like to throw over to Penny Larkins. You guys have done some really gorgeous resources that we can use as women to really raise awareness and bring into the conversations and the teams and the environments that we work in and that we hang out in, particularly as we're leading into International Women's Day. This is really timely. Penny, can I hear a little bit more about some of the work that you guys are doing to really sort of make it easy for women like me?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, a lot of the themes and discussions that we're running through today can feel quite dry, and they're important discussions that we want to be able to bring up in conversation. So to help people just like you, Lyn, we've put together an activity pack. So this activity pack has conversation starters, it has a quiz, and it also features the care video, which is always a nice little intro to care and some of the work we do. So we wanted to have a little interactive segment today with all of you joining us on this call today, and go into some breakout rooms and actually utilize these conversation starters from the activity pack. So and I want to say that these conversation starters are fantastic because they help boost critical thinking. They're linked to really interesting and relatable themes, and they're perfect for discussing within your work teams, your work communities, or really just over a general coffee or wine catch up with a friend. And we've also got some answers there, so they also can help continue those conversations. So now
that sounds amazing. Before we jump into rooms, I know
sure.
Suzi has to rush off to a meeting as well. Just like to thank you, Suzi, for carving the time out of your busy schedule too, and for sharing that really important deep dive into the work of care. So I think you're going to leave us to have a play, and this is our chance to do a bit of networking as well. So Suzi, people find Suzi on LinkedIn. Make sure you connect and follow the work that Suzi's doing as well. She really is a fearless leader. So just on behalf of everyone, thank you, Suzi.
Thank you, Lyn, and thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Bye.
excellent. Okay, Penny, back to you.
No worries. So we're going to go into some breakout rooms now. We're going to go through 5 different conversation starters. So I'll break everyone up into 5 different groups, and in each group I'll give you a different conversation starter. So it would be wonderful if you wouldn't mind jumping off mute and even turning on your cameras. There'll only be small groups of 4 or 5 people. And just so you know, even though this event is being recorded, the conversations you have in your breakout rooms won't be part of the recording. So feel free to have chat however you feel comfortable doing so. And then what we'll do is I'll ask for a representative from each group to come back to the big group and then tell us where your conversations led. So I've already got the breakout rooms going, ready to go. So I'll hit the button and hopefully it all works out, and I'll jump into each group and give you your individual conversation.
There's never enough time.
No. Yeah, that's the beauty of these conversation starters, that once they start, they can keep going, and they lead into some fantastic places. So I think we've got everyone back now from all our breakout groups. Thanks so much for participating in these conversation starters. Really appreciate you getting involved, and I'd now love to hear where these conversations have led. So I'd like to welcome group number 1. I'll read out the question which I gave you. So your question at group number 1 was, how could you change the lyrics to the song Stand By Your Man to make it more inclusive? So the lyrics are, stand by your man and show the world you love him. Keep giving all the love you can. Stand by your man. Who's our representative from group number 1? I'd love to hear where your conversation went and how are you going to change this song?
Okay, so I was from group number 1, and so was Kate and Gaynor, and we actually didn't get our question. it didn't come through the group, unfortunately. So, but in saying that, Kate, would you like to?
We had a good chat.
Yeah.
We had a great chat. We mostly were talking about, well, we kind of started with what Sarah was doing and that she's new at CARE. And then I talked about some of the stuff that I had been doing and the changes in the sustainability world that has been happening, particularly the change now that people are finally taking sustainability seriously. And Gaynor was talking about her daughter doing a master's, I think, Gaynor, in climate issues at the university. So yeah, we had a good conversation despite not getting the question.
That's a great song though, Kate. I mean, I've got a non-binary child.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, how would I change the lyrics? Because my first reaction was "Stand by a Woman," but then I was like, well, that's not inclusive. I'd get smashed by my sons and Bridget, my non-binary. So, I mean, I guess we could look at it as stand by each other and show the world you love.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
that because, I mean, I think we really need to be kind of moving to a space where gender isn't the first thing that we think about, that it's we're talking and we're interacting with humans first. Yeah, absolutely. Love that idea.
Yeah. And then finishing it with that. So can I sing? Stand
Please
by
do.
each other and show the world you love us, giving all the love you can.
Beautiful.
Stand by me. You can
That's
see
absolutely
why I'm not a
fantastic.
singer, right?
That's excellent.
I love it. Well done.
Beautiful.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, well,
I think
Thank
just
you.
with the
I
lyrics
love
from
it.
that
I
and
love
that
a little
beautiful.
sing-song.
But Lyn,
Sorry,
you got to
Lyn.
do it with the twang. You got to stand by your.
Oh
I
my
won't finish that
God.
because
Why
you've got
did
a
I
much
think of
better
that?
voice.
You are so good, LJ.
Oh,
I
that
think
was
that was-
fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry, Penny and everyone.
Oh.
I've got a bit of a delay, so if I don't mean to overtalk anyone at all.
Oh, no worries at all, Sarah. Thank you. Well, thank you, Group 1, and I'm glad you still had somewhat of a discussion. Now, Group number 2, hopefully you got your question. How have you helped amplify women's voices, either personally or professionally? Who's our representative from Group 2?
Chinnery. And we had the discussion with Lyn, LJ, and Carol. So I'll just have key points like LJ refers to this thing called grander view, whereas I say helicopter view. Basically, you're not part of that breathing and living space where things are happening. So you're an outsider, and then when you look at it at a different angle, and you're always able to give them more pointers or ways to navigate whatever the circumstances are. So that's both personally and professionally. Carol had spoke about voicing up. Like often it's difficult for people of different ages to voice up, and like how she's saying that she's old enough and now she's got nothing to do, so she's willing to voice up when there are others within that group not able to voice up, especially in the type of service she's providing with the disability and the work she does. Lyn just mentioned about how she had helped someone yesterday create a space, a younger lady who was not able to focus on her career and all that, and like give her path. So yeah, and then obviously both LJ and Lyn do both first professionally as well, helping women like us.
Beautiful. I love that everyone had a few different ideas and different pointers there, and I mean it certainly touched on that that it's so important to amplify all women's voices and all people's voices. But
Yes.
from birth, women and girls are denied their fair share of resources like money, education, and leadership opportunities. So CARE focuses on supporting women because from birth, boys and men hold unequal share of power. And because men are always seen as the default leaders, women are less likely to have a say or be heard in the discussions that best affect their lives. So too often they aren't given the chance to become leaders to shape the future of their communities or societies, which repeats the cycle of inequality. So when a woman is given the tools to lift herself out of poverty, which we've spoken a lot about today, she will bring her family and her community with her. When her voice is listened to, she will speak for not just for herself, but for others too. So thank you so much for having, great to hear that insight. And I'm sure that conversation definitely could have continued. I'd now like to go to group number 3. So group number 3, your question was, CARE launched, or your conversation rather, starter is CARE launched at the end of World War II, distributing packages of food and essential items to people whose home, jobs and way of life had been destroyed by war. Those first ever care packages became a global name for providing hope and compassion to those who needed it, regardless of their religion, gender or beliefs. If you needed to create a care package today for someone who'd been forced to leave home due to an emergency, what would be the 5 main things you would include to the value of $20 per box? Who's our representative from group number 3?
Well, it was just Estelle and I, Penny, but we just both went, oh my goodness, that is such a great question in terms of where do you start? Because obviously clean water, and if we dehydrate, we're going to die. So we need a container. But then to put the water in the container, if we need to boil it, we need it to be probably a metal container. But so maybe a tin or something like that, and obviously matches or a lighter. But we were like, oh well, matches might get wet, or if you don't have shelter. So we were sort of thinking if it's current day, you'd probably try and do a lighter, and soap to wash our hands or to try and get clean. I don't know. And we're both sort of thinking about, well, I don't know, water purifiers. We were trying to debate the cost of these things, like those tablets that you do to purify water, like how much they are, because we decided that a tarpaulin would go over our budget of $20. So how do we shelter them? So maybe a cheap blanket, but that doesn't sound like a very nice thing either. So yeah, that was kind of where we landed, was a container for food and water, and some purifiers, soap, a blanket, and some matches or a lighter. So we're both very curious to know what the right answer is.
Well, I don't know if I've got the right answer. It's a hard task. I mean, only 5 items under $20. But the original care packages typically contained several tinned meats.
Yeah, right.
They had powdered eggs. They had apricot preserves, honey, raisins, and they even had margarine, sugar, powdered milk and coffee in them. So although CARE's history was born from the care package, today the way we actually deliver aid has now shifted. When an emergency strikes, we don't simply just distribute goods or provide services. We work with local leaders, especially women's organisations, to ensure that everyone's needs are taken care of, because nobody knows a place and it's people like a local does, and they will often be the first responders in a crisis. But it's a really fun concept to think of. Yeah, for $20, what are those 5 main things that someone would need most? And it's hard. It's a hard task. So thank you so much for.
And also, Penny, can I also just comment too? It's really made me think about when, like, even that how we're supporting other women. We've actually got a huge we won a tender for delivering leadership programs to the first responders, like emergency management responders. And I was just reflecting on what we're coming up against at the moment, and it is there's just a complete lack of representation of women in those areas. And when you said how important it is to have women's voices at the table, it's something that I'm going to bring up with the committee on Thursday. I think it's just it hadn't even entered my consciousness, and I can't believe it. So yeah, it's been really valuable to think about that as well.
Oh, well, I'm just so thrilled to hear that, because that's the whole point of Her Circle. It's thought provoking. It's to have these conversations, to get these thoughts into people's heads and actually rethink, hang on, if that's the way we've done it, doesn't always mean that that's the right way to do it either. So, which is actually a good segue into our next question from group 4. Worldwide, it has been proven that women earn 77 cents for every dollar men earn for work of equal value. The gap is even wider for those women who also have children. What are the top 3 changes businesses could make to reduce the gender pay gap? Who's our representative from group 4? This is a rather tough one, but I'd be interested to see where your conversations led.
Want me to go?
Cool. Yes, please.
Okay. Hey, everyone. We came up with a bit more than 3. I mean, first of all, an organisation needs to understand what their current situation is. So we suggested that a company should go through a bit of an audit as to where their wages are currently sitting. And when you commit to that sort of process, that's not something that's just a once off and then you sort of forget about it for 5 years. It actually needs to be done every sort of, I'm not in HR, but every sort of 6 to 12 months, because as new staff entering an organisation, then, you know, if they're in the position to negotiate their pay, things can sort of change. And they need to actually be transparent with the organisation where the current pay gap is sitting. And Louise came up with a great suggestion as well, in that there needs to actually be parity in things like bonuses and promotion. Like there needs to be equitable uplift across the company, because that can also impact a gender sort of pay balance. We also talked about things like in terms of enablement for women to be working in leadership roles. And, you know, gone are the days of a 9-to-5 job. Like there does need to be flexibility. You know, it's more about productivity rather than sitting at a desk and getting the job done these days. So flexible working arrangements. We talked about paid superannuation on maternity leave. I've been at a company where that's actually been, you know, was implemented about 10 years ago. They were quite sort of progressive leadership targets. So whether that's actually at board level or leadership within the organisation, because that sort of gender pay gap, that decision making needs to come from the top. And if it is all a board of men, we're really not going to get a lot of change within a company without that representation. Yeah, that's what we came up with. In terms of if an organisation is looking to go about doing this, WGEA is a really fantastic resource. So the Workplace Gender Equity Agency, head onto their website. They've got lots of really good tips and ways in which how you go about starting those processes to have, you know, a fair gender, or to ensure that you don't have such a huge, 23%, you know, pay gap. Yeah.
Yep. Wow, that's amazing. There's a few there I definitely will be writing down, because there's some amazing points and tips there that so many businesses should be looking at. And I love the idea of having an annual review of everything as well. Although great progress has been made over the past 50 years, women are still often overlooked for high power positions. Many employees are reluctant to hire pregnant women, mothers, or even women of childbearing age. So achieving gender justice will benefit men too, through better opportunities for paternity leave, for example. So there's so much gain from really, looking at how we can reduce that gender pay gap. Thank you so much for that. And our final group number 5. Your question was, you're trapped with 20 people for 5 days, but you barely have enough food and water for everyone. Who do you choose to divide the rations, and why? So trapped with 20 people for 5 days. Who's in charge there?
That was me, and Jelly was in the group together. So It was quite funny that we're both Irish put into the one group, and that we have to talk about food and rations coming from Ireland. But we said that
I hope you talked about potatoes.
or the lack of. But we spoke about that we would look at the group and how much food that we have, and then we would do analysis of the group, determine their age, any health issues, and then distribute the food that way. So for instance, kids and the elderly, they would be first priority. Mums that maybe had a baby that was feeding or breastfeeding, they would be a priority. Anybody with health issues or dietary requirements, say celiacs, say if we had bread, we obviously wouldn't give them the bread. So we would look at those types of decisions. Then once we had sort of the most vulnerable part of the group, the food allocated to them, then we would look at the rest of the group and determine how many could survive 5 days without food. Maybe if they had more body weight, they mightn't need as much food. If they had less body weight, so smaller frames, then they mightn't need as much food. And how long could they survive without the food? So that's what we would do.
Wow, I love your thought processes of actually thinking of everyone's individual needs. And I mean, well, when we ask this question, it's certainly about talking about women are going to be and you've certainly evident of that right now, of going through and considering everyone's needs. So when a disaster strikes, women, people living with a disability and other minority groups face increased danger and discrimination. This is because they're often excluded from participating in communities or having a say in how resources, land and income are used. So we know from experience that when women lead, everyone benefits. It's such an important line. When women lead, everyone benefits, because when they speak not just for themselves, but for others, just like you're saying right now, which is why it's so important for women to have access to the opportunities, power and resources to shape the kind of world they and others want to live in. So it's just wonderful to hear where all these conversations led today. And as we've talked about, Her Circle is really just about providing this opportunity around International Women's Day for better conversations about gender equality and our shared experiences. So this can look like hosting your own International Women's Day event with your own circle, using this activity pack. If you've enjoyed doing this activity, going through these conversation starters, we actually have more conversations starters different from what we've had today in that activity pack. So it's a perfect team building exercise or something to pull out at your next dinner party. You could also, so if you'd like to, it's very easy to download that activity pack, or we can email it to you. It's all available on our website. You could also join our thought-provoking In Conversation with Grace Tame virtual event, which is on next week. And you can also sign up for that at our website, care.org.au/her-circle. The main part of Her Circle is we really want to make some noise about the power of women's leadership this International Women's Day. So please join us on Instagram if you're on Instagram, or on LinkedIn, and share a photo of the incredible women in your homes, your communities, your workplaces, your teams, and those women who help uplift others and make a real difference. And yeah, anything that you're doing, please, we'd love to see it. Share it on Instagram, and remember to hashtag us and tag us and all those sorts of things, because we've got a bit of a photo wall happening that we'll share at our end. But yes, thank you so much for participating today in these conversation starters. I loved hearing where they'd led, and I'm sure they could continue very naturally. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Penny. And just so that everyone knows, LJ will send around, or Care can add us to their newsletters as well. Obviously, anyone who doesn't want to continue receiving that, just opt out, and because there's some great links. Penny, you did a really good job of that. I think what we might do is, I think LJ is going to send all that information through, and we'll also add, thank you, Zoe, for that website link for the gender equality information. We'll add that to the follow-up as well. Just to round off, thank you very much to Care Australia for partnering with us and raising this really important and powerful program, The Power of the Multiplier Effect. and the importance of women in their role in that multiplier effect. So that's awesome. I'd just like to go around the table and ask you all just to check out with your final thoughts. Kathy McKenzie, do you want to be the first one to kick off?
Happy to, Lyn. I'm definitely going to think about how I can bring more of the conversation to support women in, who are emergency responders.
Amazing. Katrina?
I really enjoyed the conversation and just thinking about those in my circle that would benefit from just some of the conversation that we've had today. So yeah, very uplifting and very enjoyable.
Awesome. Thanks, Katrina. Zoe?
Hey everyone, thanks for the presentation. That was all really interesting. Yeah, probably, yeah, I do kind of get involved in charities and things, and sometimes I just sort of, you know, the year passes by and I realize I haven't sort of donated to anything, you know, and it's now March. So yeah, really amazing stats in terms of the number of women that get uplifted, you know, when a woman is brought out of poverty and has the ability to start running her own business and educating her children and so much more. So yeah, we'll be watching more closely as to what the campaign's up to and donating. Thanks.
Thank you, Zoe. That's very inspiring. LJ, final thoughts?
You know what, so many final thoughts. I'm having trouble putting them into one right now. But I just love the fact that everyone's come through and absolutely blown my mind with thinking outside the box, with, you know, and talking about the pay gap. It's one of the big things I keep coming back to is just how little even women who start businesses get to be able to catch the men in business, to be able to bring them up as well. So yes, thanks for the conversation. Thank you for moving also me beyond the 5, like having 20 people on an island, away from the thought of who I'd eat first and thinking about others. But thanks, guys, for such a great conversation. You've all been actually quite brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, LJ. Chinnery?
I really like the conversation and I could totally resonate to it because I come from Kenya, Africa. So I've gone through this whole thing, and my passion and drive right now is to help as many women as possible to just do their small businesses, whether thinking about it or not, or whether it's silly or not, just want to push them. So yeah, thanks.
Amazing. Thanks, Chinnery. And thanks for stepping up and being spokesperson for our group.
Thanks.
I think you kind of volunteered not, but you did it anyway. I love it. And Carol?
Yeah, thank you, ladies. This has been very interesting. And on March 8th, funny enough, I've got 5 of my best girlfriends and we're going out for dinner. And to be honest, it's the first International Women's Day in about 5 years. I haven't had a speaking gig, so I'm able to go out and celebrate with those women. And I think I'll be bringing some of these questions to the table just to see what their answers are. So thanks very much. It was very interesting.
Yeah, enjoy having a look at that activity pack. There's so many good questions to choose from, Carol. You'll love it. Sarah, final words from you.
My final words, I think what I took from this was that our circle and empowering women has never been more prevalent, and to see a collective of this is fantastic. And to see also just, you know, not only do we just bring, you know, 4 people, you know, from our circle, but just from this conversation, from what I've had, I've already expanded on my circle, and just seeing how CARE expand on their circle as an organization is fantastic as well. So, you know, we partner with fantastic initiatives like you guys as well. So, you know, it's not just individuals, it's groups of people. So, you know, you're bringing groups of people. So that's what I really took from this. And bring on International Women's Day and bring on, bringing forth light on topics that should be more spoken about.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And have we still got Laleska? Laleska,
Yes,
are you?
hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, thank you all for the conversation. I found it really insightful. So at the moment I'm studying in international development, and I found that this conversation, it deals with the power of women empowering other women, and I feel like that's really important in the industry that I'm in. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
That's wonderful, and good luck with all that learning and knowledge building and impacts that you're making as you go on that journey. It's fantastic. It's very inspiring. Have we got Louise Madden still on the call?
Yes, I am still here, and I'm just going to pre-warn you that we're about to have a fire alarm. So any loud noise, it's not intentional. But we've just had 3 firemen walk in, and they're all looking very official. I think my final thoughts are I'm genuinely grateful to work for an organisation, so I work for Brave Foundation, supporting pregnant and parenting young people across Australia, who, not by design, but is 100% staffed by women from the top down, and so a lot of these issues don't infiltrate my workplace at the moment, and there really is a culture in Brave around support and care and just making sure that everyone is okay, and it's really beautiful, and I haven't experienced that before. And yeah, sort of especially in that conversation around the pay parity, yeah, it's not something that I have to sort of actively concern myself about in my personal life, but it's something that I have to fight for and advocate for the young people that I support. So yeah, lots to think about. Thank you.
Wonderful work you do too, Louise. Well done for that choice. And it's amazing how many women are in for-purpose organisations and that are working in the grassroots and as well as in the operational and the business management roles, to bring about greater change and better outcomes in the world. So it is really quite amazing. Caitlin, final words.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great event. Thank you so much to Lyn and Leanne for all of your support getting this event off the ground. And Penny, you're a fabulous host as per usual. I think this right here, what we've done today, sharing stories, listening to each other, really talking about issues that matter, is the core purpose of Her Circle. And so I really want to challenge you all to go away from here today, take the resources, take the conversation starters, and actually share these stories with your own networks, so we can have a greater impact. I think particularly for organisations like Care Australia, it's really beneficial to have not just women, but everybody on our side really sharing our message and really getting behind our work, particularly in the times we sort of live in now, where there's a high cost of living, people are really struggling, and that sort of experience is only amplified in areas that aren't as privileged as a lot of us are. So yeah, just challenge everyone to really share these stories and amplify that message in the lead up to International Women's Day this year. Thanks, Lyn.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. The care pack, the conversation starters are fantastic. And they are a little bit different. I think there's some additions from what was in there last year. Penny, is that right? It's been expanded a bit?
The new ones that we use today are part of it, but they're completely different from what we use today, actually. Yes, so some new surprises in there as well, and a quiz as well. So
Fantastic.
You can test your friend's knowledge or your colleague's knowledge on a couple of big questions in there.
That's awesome. Well, final words from you, Penny. Do you want to wrap up?
Sure. I just appreciate everyone getting involved in the conversations, because the way where some of these conversations led, I could tell they could have kept going for some time. And I think it's just so important that we have these conversations with our own circles, family, friends at home, even with our kids. I've already started having these sort of conversations as the entry level to having these discussions are so important for young people to know. So thank you so much for everyone being involved and being part of these conversations. And Suzi was amazing as well. Some beautiful case studies she touched on as well. Some beautiful people that we work with at Care. So thank you so much for joining us today. And please get in contact, join us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I've left my email there as well. If you're running any International Women's Day event of your own and you'd like to run these conversation starters, please get in contact and I can send them your way as well. So thank you so much.
Right, thank you, Penny. And we will share the link of the recording from today. It's always hard when we had, I think we had about 10 women obviously couldn't make it for the whole session. So we have it recorded and everyone can have access to that. And we'll definitely share all those assets and the resources and the activity pack with everyone in a follow-up email. So thanks, everyone. Have a great time for the rest of for those in WA, a long weekend ahead. For those of you, have a wonderful weekend and let's keep lifting each other up.
Thanks, Lyn. See ya.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Penny.
Thanks, Lyn.
I'll just stop this recording.